The Iraq War, which began in 2003 and lasted for nearly a decade, was one of the most controversial conflicts of modern times. Rooted in the shadow of the 9/11 attacks, it was framed as a mission to dismantle weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, and liberate Iraq from the rule of Saddam Hussein. However, as history unfolded, the war's true impact on global politics, the Middle East, and the lives of millions became evident. This story delves deep into the war, told in a way that resonates with those who have lived through other historic conflicts, bringing clarity to the events that shaped the 21st century. The road to war. For those who remember the Cold War and the long-standing tensions in the Middle East, the early 2000s were a time of great uncertainty. Following the September 11, 2001 attacks, the U.S. government under President George W. Bush declared a war on terror, targeting not only al-Qaeda but also nations perceived as threats. Iraq, under the leadership of Saddam Hussein, was accused of harboring WMDs and supporting terrorism. These claims were supported by intelligence reports, but as we now know, their validity was questionable at best. Despite worldwide protests and the refusal of the United Nations to explicitly support an invasion, the United States, backed by the United Kingdom and a coalition of allies, launched Operation Iraqi Freedom on March 20, 2003. The war officially began with an intense bombing campaign known as Shock and Awe, designed to cripple Iraq's military and leadership infrastructure. Within weeks, U.S. forces entered Baghdad, and by April 9, Saddam Hussein's rule had collapsed. The fall of Saddam and the struggles of post-war Iraq. The fall of Saddam Hussein was met with mixed reactions. Many Iraqis rejoiced at the end of a brutal dictatorship, but others feared what was to come. The Bush administration had hoped for a swift transition to democracy, but Iraq's deep sectarian divides between Sunni and Shia Muslims, as well as between Arabs and Kurds, quickly ignited conflict. The dissolution of the Iraqi army and government, a policy known as de-Ba'athification, left thousands of trained soldiers and officials without jobs, many of whom turned to insurgency. The insurgency and the rise of terrorism. By 2004, Iraq was in turmoil. Insurgent groups, including al-Qaeda in Iraq, AQI, began launching attacks against U.S. troops, Iraqi security forces, and civilians. Cities like Fallujah, Mosul, and Ramadi became battlegrounds. The infamous images from Abu Ghraib prison, where Iraqi detainees were abused by U.S. soldiers, further fueled anti-American sentiment. The Iraqi insurgency evolved into a full-blown sectarian war, with Sunni and Shia militias clashing in brutal violence. The bombings, kidnappings, and executions turned Iraq into a war zone beyond the initial invasion. Even with the capture and execution of Saddam Hussein in 2006, peace remained elusive. The surge and the long road to withdrawal. In 2007, recognizing that Iraq was on the brink of collapse, President Bush implemented the surge strategy, sending an additional 30,000 U.S. troops to stabilize the country. This, along with alliances formed with local Sunni tribes against al-Qaeda, helped reduce violence, but it did not fully resolve the crisis. By 2009, newly elected President Barack Obama announced a phased withdrawal of U.S. forces. By 2011, the last American troops left Iraq, but the war's consequences continued to shape the region. The power vacuum allowed extremist groups, including ISIS, Islamic State, to rise, leading to another cycle of conflict. The legacy of the Iraq War. For older audiences who remember Vietnam, Korea, or even World War II, the Iraq War serves as a stark reminder of how modern warfare is not just fought on battlefields but also in the realm of politics, media, and public perception. Unlike the great wars of the past, where objectives were clear, Iraq became a war of shifting goals and uncertain victories. The war cost trillions of dollars and led to the loss of over 4,000 American lives, along with hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians. It reshaped U.S. foreign policy, eroded public trust in government intelligence, and left Iraq struggling with instability even decades later. Economic and political consequences. The financial burden of the Iraq War was staggering. The United States spent over $2 trillion on the war effort, a cost that included military operations, reconstruction, and veteran care. The strain on the economy led to debates over defense spending and national debt, influencing domestic policies for years. Politically, the war led to increased skepticism toward U.S. foreign interventions. Public confidence in government decisions eroded, leading to stronger demands for transparency and accountability. The impact of the war played a significant role in shaping future elections and policy discussions on military engagement. The human cost and veteran experiences. Beyond the statistics, the human cost of the war was profound. Thousands of American soldiers returned home with physical injuries and psychological trauma, including PTSD. The war left deep scars on military families, and efforts to support veterans became a national priority. For Iraqi civilians, the war brought immense suffering. Displacement, loss of life, and destruction of infrastructure disrupted millions of lives. Many Iraqis fled their homeland, seeking refuge in neighboring countries or distant lands, shaping migration patterns and humanitarian efforts. Rebuilding Iraq. Challenges and hopes for the future. Even after the war officially ended, Iraq remained a fragile state. Reconstruction efforts faced significant challenges due to corruption, ongoing violence, and political instability. The formation of a new government was marred by sectarian conflicts, making it difficult to establish lasting peace. However, Iraq also showed signs of resilience. Many Iraqis worked tirelessly to rebuild their country, focusing on economic recovery, education, and infrastructure. International organizations and allied nations provided aid to help restore critical services, though progress remained slow. Iraq in the modern geopolitical landscape. Today, Iraq continues to navigate a complex political landscape, balancing relationships with the U.S., Iran, and other regional powers. The long-term effects of the war still shape Iraq's economy, security policies, and diplomatic engagements. The country remains a key player in Middle Eastern affairs, influencing oil markets, regional stability, and counterterrorism efforts. The lessons of the Iraq War continue to be studied by military strategists, historians, and policymakers. The war's impact on global politics, the use of intelligence in warfare, and the consequences of foreign intervention are still debated today. Understanding these lessons is crucial to preventing similar conflicts in the future. Final thoughts. The Iraq War is a chapter in history that continues to shape our world today. For those who lived through the conflicts of the 20th century, it serves as a case study in both the power and the limits of military intervention. The lessons learned from Iraq remain relevant as the world faces new geopolitical challenges, reminding us all that war, no matter how justified it seems at the time, always leaves a lasting impact. As history moves forward, the Iraq War stands as a reminder of the complexities of global politics, the unintended consequences of war, and the resilience of those affected. If you like my video, share and subscribe my channel.